My name is Beth Chronister, and I serve here as the assistant minister, and it is a joy to be with you on this morning. I'm here in our sanctuary with my colleague Victoria Poling, as well as Dwight and Ginny and Byron and David on tech, and it is good to be with all of you, wherever you are joining as well. Before we begin our service, I would like to make just one quick announcement that our next Vesper service on August 12th is actually going to be a song circle. So if you're missing singing with your congregation, with your community, I encourage you to come to let me know if there's a hymn in particular you would like to sing, or if there's a song you would like to lead and share. That will be on August 12th. Welcome to worship this morning from wherever you are. It is so good to be together. I call us to worship this morning with this poem from Marge Piercy, To Be of Use. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go to the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who stand in the line and haul in their places, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hand, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. Welcome to University Unitarian Church. Welcome to worship on this summer morning. Would you please join now in singing our doxology?
that dwell below the skies. Let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land, by every tongue.
I invite you to join me in a meditation this morning. The text I've selected for us is the classic reading from the Hebrew Scriptures, book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. For everything there is a season. For everything there is a season, a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, a time to pluck up what has been planted. A time to kill, a time to heal. A time to break down, a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silent, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace.
As we go into this morning's offering, I'm cognizant that as the CARES Act has come to an end, that there are many families across this country and within this congregation who are feeling the pressures of the economic crisis that has accompanied the pandemic. As people are seeing the supports that have been a lifeline over these past 5 months disappearing, and the future is unknown about what will come next. And so as we go into this morning's offering, if you are feeling particular concern right now and carrying this stress, I want you to know that we are here for you, that we have a sharing fund within this congregation for times such as this to help members of our community through the difficulties and the challenges and the unknowns that occur in life and that surround this globe right now. And I want you to know that however much you can or cannot give to this community, this is your church. This is no less your church. You're a valued member of it. And so as I introduce this offering, noting the many ways people are part of a community and how we support each other through the ups and downs of life, would you please join me in the words we say each week? This church is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. When we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it. Following our offertory this morning, would you please join in singing hymn number 396, I Know This Rose Will Open 2 times.
Glänzt die Abendsonne auf diese stille Flut und strahlt Ruhe und Wonne auf jede Kreatur. Sie zeichnet Licht und Schatten auf die beblümte Aug und auf den grünen Maden bläst der kristallene Tau. Und auf den grünen Maden blitzt der kristallene Tau. Hier in der Zepfenspiele beim frohen Vogelchor, hier steigen Hochgefühle in meine Brust empor. Ich atme süße Freuden auf diesem Tempel ein. Mich fliehen Grammatleiden im milden Abendschein. Mich fliehen Grammatleiden im milden Abendschein. Die Abendröte am Himmel ausgespannt und süßes Nachtgeflöte auf diese Flur gesandt. Dir sei dies Herz geweiht, das reine Dank durchglüht. Es schlage noch erfreut, wenn einst das Leben flieht. Es schlage noch
Good morning. I am so thrilled to be here today as your guest speaker. Thank you, Beth, for your generous welcome, and thank you, Dwight and Jenny, for the beautiful hymn just now. The last time I joined you was in a gym, in a community center, and now we're still in this transitional state of what we call new normal. I myself am in transition. I am a UU minister in formation, and I've recently graduated from Seattle University with my Master of Divinity, and I'm discerning my next steps. I'm also a member of Quimper UU Fellowship in Port Townsend, although I'm originally from Seattle. I identify as a white woman, and I'm going to be talking about institutional racism today. So I want you to know that up front, and also that I honor my ancestral Hispanic heritage. And when I'm not preaching or organizing or offering spiritual direction, these days you'll find me curled up with a book and a cat and a cup of tea in my home office. In our meditation this morning, I shared a reading from the book of Ecclesiastes in the Hebrew Scriptures. To everything there is a season. This text holds some very strong contrasts. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, as we're all experiencing right now during COVID-19. Also, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, even a time for war and a time for peace. Friends, now is a time for embracing. This is a season to take a position. This is a time to make a stand, to make a commitment to anti-racism and anti-oppression work as an institution, as a church. Unitarian Universalists have a long and deep tradition, a passion for encouraging individuals in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. This is one of our strengths. And yet, in such times, it can also be a weakness, as it can be more difficult to organize when we are focused individually on our own growth and development. It's not enough to take a position alone, to name and claim what is true for us. A voice blazing a trail in the wilderness is a voice alone. In the collective, where there are many, there is a greater strength. It's a time to side with others, to join together as an institution, to make an ask, to make demands. To side with love looks like siding together as an entire church. We are a bold people with an honorable religious identity as Unitarian Universalists, and our time is now. I'll share one example of taking a side as an institution to speak with one big voice as an entire church. Several weeks ago, federal tactical teams were sent to Portland, Oregon. The First Unitarian Church of Portland responded by signing on as a plaintiff in a lawsuit. This lawsuit was filed against the militarized presence on July 21. And as you've likely heard this week, Oregon Governor Kate Brown announced that troops would begin withdrawing on Thursday, which has in fact begun to happen. This congregation's quick response is made possible by their deep roots and their history of ongoing relationship building and social justice witness in Portland. Taking a side emerged out of this muscular and deep commitment to relationship building. To give you a sense of what this sounds like, I would like to read an excerpt from the letter written to the congregation by Senior Minister Reverend Bill Sinkford. He writes, "First Unitarian was approached to be a plaintiff due to our ongoing witness of the protests for Black lives and the transformation of policing in Portland. We believe the lawsuit falls squarely within our church mission to act for social justice. As Unitarian Universalists, our principles uphold the right of conscience and democratic process. And we strive for world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. These are times where there is much trouble to the spirit. This lawsuit is an important way for us as a faith community to bear witness and live out our faith principles. The words of Reverend Bill Sinkford. When I first read this letter, I was moved in a way that I can only call religiously. UUs act accountably when we affirm and promote our principles, including the use of democratic process and the inherent worth and dignity of all persons. Accountability to our principles looks like liberation. Our church exists under the legal auspices and nonprofit corporate status of the United States government. And let us be clear that the U.S. is a colonialist nation founded through the genocide of indigenous people and through chattel slavery. And yet, this state also holds a pluralistic vision, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. This vision is not yet realized. White supremacy culture makes the experience of living in the United States, both as undocumented and as citizens, one that is full of the suffering and brokenness that we can see happening right now. And yet, out of many, we aspire to be one. Our congregations are also bodies of many that depend on the principled and passionate engagement of every member. I wonder what time it is for University Unitarian Church. As the largest flagship UU church in Western Washington, you have a position as a visible leader and a beacon for other congregations. How does your history and your vision, your web of relationships as a congregation inform how you will be and act, how you will lead, and how you will follow the leadership of Black, Indigenous, and people of color in these times? I urge you, if you are still wondering what to do to support anti-racism and anti-oppression work, if you are not yet involved, now is the time to come out of isolation and get involved on Zoom. It's time to come out of thinking and worrying, speaking to yourself and your trusted loved ones. Now it is time to join with your small groups, your caring circles, your covenant groups, your book groups. Now is the time to come out and commit to speak out. Let us draft a response to these times together. I love the process of speaking out when it's done in writing, collaboratively, with a group of people drafting, shaping, refining, speaking with one big voice together, calling for accountability. It is a powerful experience. We are accountable to our covenant of care for one another as members of congregations. And accountability doesn't have to be frightening. It can be deeply creative. It can call us into more satisfying and fulfilling relationships with one another. Remember, the work of justice is to create sanctuary and moments of deep peace. And yet, sanctuary and peace come from embracing conflict. This is not a time to refrain from embracing conflict. We must look within and examine our own institution and our circles and our relationships for traces of tyranny and unilateral actions. This particularly is an area for white work. If you are white, it's a painful yet important question to ask. Where are you acting consciously and unconsciously from a place of entitlement? Truly, it is human nature to act entitled to something we believe that we deserve. And yet this behavior becomes oppressive when people who are assigned rank and privilege in a racist system act as though that rank and privilege is deserved. It is also, fortunately, human nature to be generous and collaborative. The work of dismantling white supremacy begins with each of us who hold a white identity. It begins with creating safer spaces for people who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Because there can't be a many or a one in the United States or in our churches if only some people have enough rest and health and stability and safety to be able to speak with one big voice. White work is important work, and creating sanctuary is essential because our collective spiritual health and well-being as Unitarian Universalists depends on speaking together. Suffragist Elizabeth Cady Stanton writes, "The moment we begin to fear the opinions of others and hesitate to tell the truth that is in us, and from motives of policy are silent when we should speak, the divine floods of light and life no longer flow into our souls." Anti-racism and anti-oppression work is soul work. Womanist theologian Mitzi Smith calls her readers to do the work of liberation that your soul must have. I invite us to begin thinking of justice work as a practice, a spiritual practice, a practice that nourishes even as it challenges. I hear from people along the continuum of color how it does not feel safe, and white folks often mean uncomfortable when saying the word safe. I suggest that we commit to creating brave space rather than safe space. Being brave enough to speak from the heart when we are together creates a wider field, an energetic field. It creates movement and ultimately leads to that place where we can take a side together, and it generates action. This is why we need one another, to create that generative field where leaps of creative possibility can happen. Some people would call that grace. I'll share a small story of grace that I experienced recently. July was BIPOC Mental Health Month, and I spent several weeks reading and listening to counselors and coaches and wellness advocates who identify as BIPOC, speaking directly to people who also identify as BIPOC. As a white person bearing silent witness to the grief and the struggle, as well as the active healing and resilience building, changed my mind about justice. And changing my mind is one of the surest ways I know to recognize grace acting in our world. I realize that when I think of justice as activism and advocacy, my ideas are still influenced from a top-down, power-over position of having white privilege. I know that when I feel the emotional benefit of doing something magnanimous or charitable, I can sustain my engagement in the work. But when I commit to holding the grief and the pain, listening and strengthening my colleagues of color through presence and witness, I am called into a fuller humanity. I am able to drop into power with. It is a choice, and I am called to choose that every time. So today I come before you as a minister, a student on the path to ordination, as a white woman who has made and will continue to make lots of mistakes and uncomfortable discoveries, who's daring to fail and not look so good and be made aware of how I'm causing harm. I ask you to come alongside me in practicing small daily acts of justice making. Acts that come from changes of mind, subtle shifts in perspective, acts that come from a place within when we say, I will no longer dishonor myself or others. This is the individual step in the search for truth and meaning that allows us to come together as many, as a church body, to respond and call for leadership that speaks with one big voice. One final comment on anti-racism and anti-oppression work. I hear so many people asking what to do and how to do it. And if I can offer just one recommendation, it's to start with your skill set and your existing resources and see what sticks to that. I have a background in education and curriculum development, and so the model that appeals to me is a developmental model of learning and growth, of stages of acquiring skills and crossing thresholds as I work on allyship. I believe in encouraging a growth mindset, and I see anti-racism work as a journey that I commit to out of a deep desire, not just out of principle. I deeply desire to learn skills that allow me to deepen my relationships and be more connected to others. I am moving from being activated by activism into the realm of learning how to love better. I urge you to take a deep breath when you wonder what you can do and turn to some of these practical and useful frameworks and read the books they suggest and take action and discuss them together. And please do this without shame for where you are on your learning curve. Reserve your shame for the larger system that we are a part of, one that has committed great violence from top down. So I have work to do, and I know you do too. At this moment, I am a white woman in a book group, which I was reminded through a meme on social media is what white women do when we're interested in social change. We join a book group. So, do what you can do. Becoming an anti-racist, anti-oppressive institution is a big task, and I know you can do it. You can commit to becoming a church where white people do white work, which makes the lives of members who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color easier. Friends, this call is a call to fall in love more deeply with the world, with many voices of history, to not let social distance be emotional distance. Let us fall in love with reality together. There's a greater experience of love that awaits. May it be so. And please join me now in singing hymn 1068, Rising Green.
My blood doth rise in the roots of yon oak, a sap doth run in my veins, boundless my soul like the open sky, where the stars forever have lain. Where the stars, where the stars, where the stars forever have lain. My hands hold the weavings of time without end, my sight as deep as the sea. Beating my heart sounds the measures of old, that of love's eternity. That of love, that of love, that of love's eternity. I feel the tides as they answer the moon, rushing on a far distant sand. Winging my song is the wind of my breast, and my love blows over the that carries days of the old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our faith settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green, rising green, rising green to bring a new day.
As we return to our daily lives, let us carry with us the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, and the power of transformation. Let us carry these in our hearts until we are together again.